Welcome to Design This, Beyond the Dieline. Here we talk about cannabis, crypto, and NFTs. My name is Mikey. Thanks for joining me. And here we have joining us today is Cesar.
What's up, guys? My name is Cesar Santamaria, and I work with Mikey on Awaken Koala stuff. So I wanted to come on and kind of speak on some of the topics that pertain to cannabis and NFT.
So Cesar is a great friend, business partner, and media specialist that we have here on the team. And today we want to talk about risk a little bit and why we're here in the first place, taking on topics like cannabis, crypto, NFTs, what they even have to do with each other, and diving into some of the issues that we face as creators in the space and that our clients face.
So all right. So NFT and crypto stuff, projects that we've been working on are kind of relatively new, right? We picked them up, I would say less than a year, probably like 9 months that we've been heavily working on stuff like that. But it's interesting to see how cannabis and the crypto space are relatively similar when it comes to how, uh, I guess, like, I don't want to say civilians, but like common day people kind of like are kind of looking at it as like a risk, or I just look at it kind of funny. Like cannabis, even though cannabis has been legalized, right? Like there's a good swath of the like population that don't really um see they don't see why it's legal, right? They still see it as a risky, like, um governmental decision, right? That's why some states have it, some states don't. And then crypto, kind of, I would say the similar aspect, in the sense that like people kind of look at it from a distance and like kind of perceive it as something that's really risky.
Mhm.
Different types of risk, right? Cannabis is considered a drug, and then crypto is just a volatile like market.
Mhm.
But same type of like risk, uh, distance creating, right? Like people just say like if they don't mess with it, they just stay away from it.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. So like that leads me into what I was thinking about, like what makes it risky, right? Like what makes cannabis risky, what makes NFTs, crypto risky. And for me, I think it's the lack of understanding across the board to the majority of the population. And that is created mostly because of just the information. Most people don't have access to the information. Most people won't put in the extra effort to find out for themselves. So that's what makes it our responsibility as creators in the space to bring that information to the people through the projects that we work on, through the brands that we develop, the NFT collections that we create. We're constantly informing and creating understanding within the mass marketplace so that people can understand and won't be so afraid. Like a lot of it has to do with fear. People are afraid of the unknown. If they don't know it, they don't understand it, they push it away, or they make it into something that maybe it isn't necessarily. And because of that, they don't see the good in it. So I think that's the similarity that is across the board when you talk about cannabis, when we talk about crypto. That's the one thing that they both have in common, is this lack of understanding and this level of fear with people, like general audience.
It's interesting to see, just because again we worked on cannabis projects prior, and it's again like you see like certain populations gravitate towards it, and like larger portions of it not. Um, and like going off what you said about information, a lot of information that's easily found is like negative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you just log into MSNBC or whatever news outlet that you like, you just kind of like click home
Because
to.
that's how news works, right?
Yeah, it's like the third tab is like crypto world is falling, and like that's
Yeah.
they're not wrong, but hey, like at the end of it, like the easiest information to find on either cannabis or crypto is negative
Mm-hmm.
usually. And like Mike said,
Yeah, because people talk about the bad news. They love bad news. Like every time you turn on, I'm from Cleveland. So when I go home and I turn on the news, the first thing I see is the next body that was found because of some homicide, some shooting, or some gang violence. That's more reported on than, the student that just graduated valedictorian from an inner city high school that just received a college graduation. scholarship to go to college, and we don't hear about that kind of stuff
Yeah,
because that doesn't make headlines. But somebody got shot
it
on,
doesn't get clicks.
55th and St. Clair. That's all over the news. Everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same approach when it comes to crypto cannabis. Everyone, all the headlines, they focus on the negative, and that's the news that spreads. It's harder to spread the good news.
The one thing I again from me, like just kind of on the media side, it's always interesting watching you work on like the branding aspect of cannabis like company, as well as like kind of working on NFT projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reason being is because it's like as I'm watching, I personally perceive like we've worked on like other projects with like companies that are a lot more established, have quote unquote more legitimacy in the industry, whatever industry that is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for me, it's interesting how like the at least from my perspective, the crypto space and the cannabis space have kind of been running and gunning when it comes to like creating their image, right? Like because weed's been sold. Nah, let's not play. Like weed's been being sold for like forever, right? Probably more than a lot of it was sold prior to someone having a logo on it, right? Like people were just selling sacks of weed, right? So like the one thing that I'm seeing is like this rebranding is interesting because watching you trying to apply some of those like industry standards to like cannabis. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying it doesn't exist, but like it's interesting because like now the way that the cannabis world can get legitimacy is through its branding. It's through its like visual appeal, right? Because that's step number one. Like when you go to a store, like you're attracted by the packaging of set whatever you're looking
Mm-hmm.
for. And same thing with the NFT, man. Like a lot of it is just I mean, run and gun by like people who are just trying to like get their product out, right? And they're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily branding experts or packaging experts.
Yeah,
They're just trying to get their name on the box, their logo, and just like, yo, buy my stuff.
yeah, and that's where we start talking about like quote unquote like bad players in
Yeah,
the game,
yeah,
and so it's always an uphill battle because a lot of people pay attention to that because it's true. There's a lot of people in every rising market. You're gonna have people there that are taking advantage. In cannabis and crypto, anywhere there's a new industry, there's new rules being made, there's new regulations that take time.
yeah,
In that gap where things are being made and things are taking time, there's people taking advantage, and those are the people that you hear about. It's not the ones that are doing good because the ones that are doing good are putting in the work to do it the right way, and it's not as quick. It's not as fast. You don't have as many of those projects to be able to talk about. So we like to be on the positive side of both of those, of cannabis and crypto,
yeah,
really helping people like tell their stories and create their presentation and their perception to be positive and to have a good impact on the community, on the industry, on everything around them. And it's a lot of work.
yeah.
So it's a lot of work. And then because of all the like the bad news and all the
Negative stereotypes.
yeah, it like add all everything that we've talked about in the past, 10 minutes, add all that up. That's everything that's stacked against you in these industries. And that's what you take on being a professional in these industries and helping people.
Yeah, but it's done well. It again, it's something that can change like the visual aspect of like cannabis, right? Like you're already kind of seeing it now, right? Like when you go to like some of these like well, we were in California, in Los Angeles, like when we would go some of those like cannabis stores or like what is it,
Dispensaries.
dispensaries. There you
Mm-hmm.
go. Um, the the quality of packaging was different. Like it's you started that was like 2020, 2019. Like you started seeing like a shift in like how even weed was like packaged and presented. And like it like in the visual appeal of like the packaging lifts the brand. I mean, it's at the end of the day it's weed, but like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to elevate like the perception of it, right? Because prior to this, I'm not gonna lie, like you can get some weed in a bag, like from
Mm-hmm.
your local dealer, right? So that like the the leaps and bounds to go from that to the packaging is crazy. But most people still perceive it in that plastic bag. that the dude down the block sells it in that you don't want to mess with, right? Like
Yeah.
that's always a perception. But again, I think that's why the this podcast is important, right? Because like the packaging and the design of it is very important to like how things are perceived and received.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and that's why we do it. I mean, that's what keeps you going as a creator in this space. With all that stacked against you is being part of this almost paradigm shift of perception behind something that's really good. Like cannabis is really good for you, and it helps so many people.
yeah,
And the same can be said for crypto and NFTs and the impact that that can have, and even the potential impact because you get into crypto and NFTs, and there's so much realm of possibility. We're working with new technologies that we've never touched before, um, on projects that I've only dreamt of as a creator when I was young, and to be working on those projects now is like a dream come true. So for me, it's like the most exciting space you can possibly be in as a creator. And yeah, it's a little risky, but it comes with the territory. Like that's what it takes to create something new and to be part of innovation is to be willing to take on that risk and put in the work and do what most people wouldn't so that you can create what most people can't and really make a change.
yeah. I mean, it's I personally like it. I personally like where things are heading in that in those in those in those two areas.
Mm.
Mainly because as like the it's early, it's early, right? Like and with any investor, the one thing they always tell you is like, yo, get in it early, and especially if you see something good in it,
Mm-hmm.
because it can definitely go somewhere. And honestly, we're early and it's good. It feels good, right? Like there's a lot of obviously like shifting when it comes to like trying to figure out where it's gonna go. But the one thing I do know is that both are gonna go exponentially up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just and again, I'm gonna keep reiterating. I think it starts with the branding, like the perception of it. Like if the
Mm-hmm.
language changes, if the visual appeal changes, and people can consume it a little softer and easier,
Mm-hmm.
that's really it, man.
Yeah.
Like,
And it depends on where you are too, right? Like in the US,
yeah, that too.
you know,
In
just
Colorado,
depending on like we're happy to be here in Miami.
yeah, yeah,
And we're not from Miami. I never saw myself living in Miami. We moved over here from LA and
yeah, yeah,
but we were here in Miami um mostly because of the freedom that was here. Like we were just chasing freedom the whole time.
yeah.
And so we found freedom here in Miami and it just happened to become the mecca of everything crypto, NFT, Web3 related. This became the place, like the launching pad for a lot of the recent projects that we've been working on. So it was risky moving here, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I was gonna
but
say,
but you know that's been paying dividends ever since. So it was definitely worth the risk for sure.
mhm,
And especially working in cannabis, in California, cannabis is so much more free.
yeah,
And there's way more industry there.
pre-established
And
already.
Miami, it's like up and coming.
Yeah,
So,
being
but
there
it's
early.
yeah, exactly. It's an exciting place to be in cannabis here in Miami where things are growing and you're able to become a part of that growth and be there early and see and be a part of it as it starts to mature and bring in some of that experience and really help people here.
Yeah, the one thing with the cannabis space here, right? It's interesting because the demographic here in Florida is different. At least like going to some of these cannabis events, and just kind of hearing people out that have been in the space here in Florida for a long time. Um, it's this is the first space that I think is having a different approach because the consumer is different. Like California and Colorado, like easily won, their like weed status, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a younger demographic. They understand the benefits of it. Their perception of it is less negative. Um, but listening to some of these events, the task at hand is to change the perception of cannabis or the presentation of it because the the consumer here is a lot older, and at least that's what I remember. Like the tactics that Colorado and California use for cannabis consumption don't really work here. At least not in the same way, right? It's not that it's at least what I got from it was that it's not that cannabis is looked down on. It's more so like the presentation needs to be different. Like this older demographic is almost open to it, but you got to present it in a different manner. And
Hmm.
I think that's a really good challenge because I think that's like the if we can get if Florida can figure out that marketing like aspect of it to this like older generation, I think it's a microcosm to like the figuring it out for the rest of the country.
Hmm.
Because you get a lot of snowbirds out here, and then like people who fly in from other parts of the country, like they don't technically not from here, they
Yeah,
just
especially
retired
during the
here.
cold months.
Yeah,
You got the
exactly.
people coming out from New York.
So if it works on them, it'll work on their friends, right? Because like they're always gonna go back to wherever they came from,
Mhm.
and if it works on them, they'll like pass it on, like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
'cause
it's word of mouth.
they can experience it
Yeah,
here and
exactly.
then take it home with them.
So I personally think that Florida has like a really like leg up on changing the industry just because the hardest demographic to convince on cannabis has been the older generation.
Hmm.
But like the task at hand is they're close to it, I think. Like I think they're slowly figuring it out, like at least listening to some of these like experts in the field in Florida.
Hmm.
Um and they're close. So I'm excited for what that's gonna be. Because I think it's gonna change like the national perspective, not just like a statewide.
Yeah, yeah.
And kind of in the kind of you kind of apply the same thing to NFTs and crypto, right? Like
Mhm.
Miami became a hub for crypto, and it's been booming. Obviously, it's like up and down like anything else, but um, the one thing that's it's here to stay. Like you see some of the cities here in Miami kind of accept it. Yeah, like I think the first time that I saw a couple Bitcoin ATMs were here in Miami,
Hmm.
and I remember hearing about the mayor of Miami speaking on the adoption of crypto into its ecosystem.
Yeah,
So I'm like, okay, like again, like
and that's another big reason why we're here.
yeah,
But we saw the way that the mayor was moving, the way that he was reacting to everything that was happening nationwide, and that was a big part of what led us here because we're like, okay, we can get behind that. Like this
yeah,
guy, he's ready to move, you
yeah.
know.
I mean, we started a business, right? You know, on like any if anyone ever like tells you about starting a business, it's a risky business, right? Number one thing is risky. Like, yo, are you sure? Can you make a
Yeah.
living off of this? This is always like literally every time I go home to Cleveland, you know, I haven't seen, you know, someone I haven't seen in a while. So, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I run an agency. And if, especially if someone that I know that's older than me, that's known me since I was a kid, they're like, yo, how's that going for you? Like
Yeah.
that, you know, because they understand business and how it's like up and down, but it's risky, right? So, but we gambled on ourselves. We gambled on Miami. And I think that risk, I'm not saying that we're like people who love risk, but but I think we are easily attracted to it, especially if it makes sense, right?
Yeah, and we know how to manage it, and we know what makes sense, what feels good, especially being in the creative field, like cannabis, crypto, NFTs. These are spaces that are really exciting,
Yeah,
and it's balancing that excitement with the risk, and then also just making sure that you're aligning yourself with people that are moving in a positive direction and taking on more of that responsibility to do things right. Because there's a lot of people that will do things wrong in these spaces. Like I said, like and it's in a gray area. Like
yeah,
all of these, and that's what makes it risky. Like
yeah,
it's gonna take time for things to be regulated. So in the meantime, you have to make sure that you're working with people that are putting in the same amount of work to make sure that everything that they do is positive and has a positive impact. And so, and we have a good responsibility as being on the creative side, being
yeah.
designers and media specialists, and doing what we're doing with the development of NFT collections and development of brands in the cannabis space and the crypto space.
And the marketing that goes behind it.
It's all the visual communication.
Yeah,
It's all the face of these brands and the communication that goes out and the way that people perceive it. It's so important to the one to the success of the brands themselves, but two to the direction of the industry and the way that things move. And so making sure that we're putting in the work, and I feel like there's not enough of it. Like I want to multiply us by like 10 at least just to move
yeah.
things faster. But
Again, not to toot our own horn, right? But just being in this like branding like area of just building brands and their marketing schemes behind like their product or whatever that may be. Um, it's interesting to see how I don't want to give us too much credit, but like it's step one is like the branding, right? Like I think if any company wants to see some type of growth or um like positive reaction to their product, it's like you got to tell your story correctly and it's got to be presented well, right? Because like going again, I'm not to shit on anybody, but like when when going to different types of events, different types of like companies that are selling different products or they're trying to sell their product, you see a lot of tabling. Yeah, we run through a lot of product, man. Like we see a lot of stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And as people that work on the branding side of things, like it's you can easily see where people put effort and where they did it, you
Yeah.
know, and it's easily noticeable. And then you see the companies that are putting the time and effort um behind their story, behind their packaging,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding how important it is. It's again they have a leg up just because that's step one.
Yeah. And
That's
for
step
for
one.
those that don't, it happens for two reasons. Either they don't know or they don't care.
Yeah, yeah,
If they
one of the
don't
two.
if they don't know, okay, that's our opportunity to step in and help them. If they don't care, that's a problem.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's usually the problem.
Yeah,
Like they don't care, and a lot of people don't see them
yeah,
points.
I laugh, but that is the real problem.
It's a pushback. It's like we always get pushback on like, hey, like yo, like your branding needs a lot more. Not because that's what not because I want you as a client, but like yo, like you're really trying to sell this, you need to focus on that. Like you can't skip step one and think that you could again. We can't have the dealer mentality and just sell you stuff in a plastic bag, bro. Like that's not
Mhm.
it's not gonna work.
Facts. Oh yeah, so to finish the thought that I was having, um, so part of the responsibility of doing what we do is putting in the work and being on the positive side of change, but then also connecting those that are on that side. And so that's another part of what we do. And the biggest part of what we're doing with the Dreamforce Republic is connecting people that are on that way as we meet them along the way. Is okay, here's someone that's doing really good in the space. Here's someone that's putting in the work,
Yeah.
that actually cares, that's, you know, putting out good information. How can we bring them in, keep them close, and connect them as we go? And that way we start to build a community and support each other and start to have a greater impact and start to collaborate even more. And so that's the space that we've been in. We've been in Miami for about a year now. That whole year was getting established. We didn't know a single soul when we first moved here. So it was just hitting the ground running, getting started. And now that we've been here for a year, we're a little bit more established and we're starting to get to know more people, grow more community. So I think getting into year two, the year that we're in right now, is really exciting for me because this is where we really get to start to make an impact on Miami and
Yeah.
on the industries that are here. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. And again, it's cool for us just because we're in that space where and I tell Mike this all the time, like, yo, like I mean we're not old, but we're not technically young either, right? And both of these industries have this like very variant of ages, right? Like the NFT crypto space is really young, right? They're really gung ho about it. They're more savvy on the tech side. So their presentation is like almost left for last. While the cannabis industry has been more established in the sense that like people have been in it for a lot longer. You see people who have had a footing. We've met people who've been in the cannabis industry for 20 plus years, right? Um, but they both have the same similar problem where like they're focused on the product or the part that excites them, right? With NFT crypto space, they're excited about the technology. With cannabis, they're excited about the product. You know, they've been around it, they understand it fully. Like we've met so many people who
Yeah,
like,
the effects that it has on people's
yeah,
lives, how much it helps.
yeah, man. And I think those two things are really positive. But the part that's always lagging is that like the presentation part, right? Like it's mainly because again, like if you don't know how to do it yourself, like you focus on what you like are passionate about, and it's usually the product at hand. But for us, it's like for us, it's interesting because we're like in that in between space where like we're old enough to where we have experience within like our own space, but we're also young enough to like understand like the market value of presentation, right? Like,
Yeah, and new on the scene.
yeah,
So I just want to take a moment to thank uh, Cannabis Radio thank you to Brandy and Darren and Brosco at Cannabis Radio for helping us just having our voices be heard and the voices of our guests. We're going to be bringing a lot of really cool people that are doing positive work in all of these spaces onto this show and getting deep into some of these conversations and spreading more of that positive information, hopefully really making an impact on everyone that's listening. So no, it's appreciated for sure.
Yeah. For me, it's just experience of listening to experts in the field, right? Like I just love to sit back and listen and have people just kind of spit facts at me about like what they're really passionate about. And it's been interesting to be in the cannabis space and hear these women's groups who are focusing on like what cannabis does specifically for them, what strands, right? Or even older people who are like, yo, like ointments work for me. I mean, just the different demographics and how they perceive the cannabis stuff. So it's fun for me, man. Like I can't say I'm an expert. I mean, I know about weed, but like I don't know about weed like that. But I get the same feeling in the crypto space, right? Like the people who are passionate about it, and I think like Mike said, I think the one thing that this podcast is gonna do is bring the like the positive aspects that people kind of oversee easily, and how like that impact is gonna be greater than like we perceive now, right? Because it's early.
Yeah,
it's early.
It is early. So yeah, just to wrap things up, I think get in early, take on the risk where it makes sense, and be a part of the positive change in the fast growing industry. So thank you, Cesar, for joining me.
Yeah,
and for just rocking with me this whole time. Since we started our business 2.5 years ago up until now, the whole transition from Cleveland to LA to Miami, and
everything in between.
What happens next, right?
I mean, hey man, I appreciate it. And at the end of the day, like, without risk, we wouldn't be here. So
straight up, without risk, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So you can download episodes of Design This Beyond the Dieline. Look for all of our episodes by going to cannabisradio.com or subscribe to this show on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Till next time, always think beyond the dieline.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.